Hey everybody out there in YouTube land, Jake, the one-man band, is back again. And let me propose a question to you guys. Are the Creatures of Grimm, these things right here, are they scary? I'll give you a moment to think about the question, come up with an answer. You did your thinking? Came up with an answer? Well, the answer is no. Looking back over the last 4 volumes of RWBY and the instances where the Creatures of Grimm were in those volumes, I've come to the conclusion that the monsters themselves aren't all that frightening. Sure, they have frightening qualities and they have these strange forms that might strike fear into someone, but for us as the audience, they just don't hold up a form of dread or the essence of fear as other things. And I think that for that, it really hurts RWBY as a show because of it. Now, a lot of you people may be thinking, Jake, how can you say that they're not scary? This one's like a freaking werewolf, this one's a giant spiky bear, and did you see the Grim Horseman? I mean, that thing was scary, it did some scary things. Well, yeah, while I'll admit that the designs of them are indeed frightening, they're frightening, and that's pretty much it. They're not scary. You see, fear is a very fickle thing. Fear is very suggestive, and the whole concept of fear is the idea that it gives someone the idea of dread. It gives them the feeling of dread deep down in their gut when they see or experience something. And you would think in a world like Remnant, where they're plagued by the Creatures of Grimm every single day, us as the audience would learn to fear these creatures a little bit more. Just so we feel more in the mindset of the people of Remnant themselves. So I believe that there's a few real big factors out there that really contribute to why the Creatures of Grimm aren't truly frightening, aren't truly scary. The first off is the Huntsman. Now, while I have my opinions on the Huntsman, let that be known, that's a future video that I'm going to be making for you guys. While I have my opinions on the Huntsman, they do indeed do their job fairly well. They are very good at killing the Creatures of Grimm. That's why they were created, to kill and slaughter these creatures to protect the people of Remnant. And when we see that one huntress in training can take on dozens of these Creatures of Grimm by herself, it really gives us the idea that these things really aren't all that scary at all. If someone could just take on droves of them and easily take them on, and take them out, and come out practically unscathed. So due to the fact that our protagonists are such effective huntsmen and huntresses, gives off the concept that these Creatures of Grimm really aren't all that frightening or a threat at all. But you see, this isn't the biggest factor that contributes to the Creatures of Grimm not being scary. No, there is one more, and this is the bigger one that I believe is the true factor what makes the Grimm not scary. The Grimm really have no lasting presence and don't affect the world around them. Let me explain before you go down in the comments talking about how there's only a few bastions of safe haven in the world from the Creatures of Grimm. And you see, that's also a factor that works against the Creatures of Grimm. In the expanded material, such as the World of Remnant videos, and even the intro of the series itself, the show is trying to push onto the audience that the Creatures of Grimm are scary, that they are frightening. They can kill someone in an instant, and they drove humanity to the brink of destruction. But the chief thing, the chief factor of the matter is that we, as an audience, do not witness that. You can pray and yell to the heavens as much as you want about how the Creatures of Grimm are scary, how they are frightening, how they are destructive, but unless you show us, we as the audience will not believe it. You hear that, Miles and Carrie? Once again, the concept of showing besides telling. And there have been ample opportunities to show off how frightening the Creatures of Grimm can truly be. Let's take it down volume by volume. In volume 1, I would say we had the second most grim encounters in this volume. We of course had the trailers, where mostly the only trailer that had Creatures of Grimm were the red trailer and the white trailer. And in both, while Weiss did struggle with with her adversary, we didn't at the time know that it was a Creature of Grimm. The only Creatures of Grimm that we did in fact know were the ones that RWBY fought, and she just rinsed through those guys. The next instance where we see Creatures of Grimm is in the Emerald Forest, and even though there are a few mishaps with RWBY and Weiss, for the most part, everybody just plows through the Grimm. Yang is able to dispatch an Ursa, Blake is able to do so as well, Ren kills a King Taijutsu, and at the midpoint of the volume, we fight the Giant Nevermore and the Giant Deathstalker. This was the first time we saw Creatures of Grimm that may have been too much of a match for our heroes. These Creatures of Grimm were a little bit frightening due to the fact that our heroes couldn't take them on single-handedly. They had to work as a team. Then, of course, we had the Borbatusk during Professor Port's teaching lesson, but for the most part, that Grimm wasn't really frightening, due to the fact that Weiss was able to dispatch of it, even though she had trouble with it, you know, at the beginning. Fast forward to Volume 2, and we really only see Creatures of Grimm when we go out to Mountain Glen, and then Vale itself is breached. But we run into the same issue. All we see is nothing but the Huntsman and Huntresses slaughtering the Creatures of Grimm. In Volume 3, when the Grimm start to invade the Vale and Beacon itself, we once again are subjugated to the Grimm pretty much being slaughtered. And with Volume 4, we barely got to see any Grimm in Volume 4. We had the character short that was the trailer, where RWBY was once again slaughtering Grimm. We had Crow kill a few Beowulfs, and then we had the Nustalok, or the Grimm Horseman, at the very end. That was the final boss during the finale. Now, during all those times, there was one key thing that never happened. That never happened during any of those encounters, during any of those battles, that would have instantly made the Grimm scarier. Death. We never once saw anybody die by the hands of the Creatures of Grimm, save for Roman Torchwick and that Huntsman in Volume 4, although we didn't actually see it by a Grimm's hand, so we were kind of lost on the issue. So, out of 4 volumes, and out of all the encounters where Creatures of Grimm were on screen, there has only been one on-screen fatality done by a Grimm. And it's not like there wasn't opportunity for it. In Volume 2, when Vale was breached, there could have been scenes where civilians were being cut down by Ursa or being pounced on by Beowulfs, just have their heads just friggin' bit into. Or freaking a King Taijutsu swallowing up a few people. During the Battle of Beacon in Volume 3, we could have had griffins flying down, carrying people off. And I know some of you in the comments are going to put down, but there was that one guy that got carried off from Team Bronze in Volume 3. We didn't see it actually on screen. It was in the background. We didn't actually see his death. I'm not counting it. We even saw the Creatures of Grimm charging through the fairgrounds as civilians were running away. But the Creatures of Grimm weren't killing anybody. It's in their nature. It's their drive to kill humanity. So why haven't we seen the Grimm actually kill anyone? And I know some of you are probably thinking, well, it was still being a lighthearted show back then. You know, they didn't want to show anything bad. But especially during Volume 3, the Volume 3 final episodes when it was starting to take a more darker turn? Why not help shoehorn that darker turn in with actually now showing off the Grimm as being truly scary, truly frightening? Up to this point, yeah, our heroes have just blown past them, blown into them. Yeah, they're not really a threat, but now we're seeing the Creatures of Grimm just tearing through civilians, maybe killing a few Huntsmen. The only real savagery that we saw from a Creature of Grimm during Volume 3 was when that big Beowulf, cut down one of the Elysian Knights and then proceeded to rip its counterpart in half. How much more powerful would that scene have been if, besides Elysian Knights, those were actually human soldiers? Human soldier didn't have to be ripped in half. He could have just been bitten and then thrown up against the wall. He could have just been sliced up and just fallen over and just been dead. But it would have actually shown us that the Creatures of Grimm can actually touch humanity. And you see, in the World of Remnant videos where they talk about the Grimm, we actually show Grimm are actually shown killing the human representations in those things. But not in the actual show. In the actual show, the Creatures of Grimm are pretty much a laughing stock. They're just a stock creature-like villain being left on the sidelines as the sort of the ever-present evil. And I'm just saddened by the fact that the Creatures of Grimm have been pushed to the side for more of these human villains. And I understand that human villains are more compelling, they give more story, they're better villains in the long run. But if you can't display the animalistic creature villains as frightening, as scary, then what's the point of having them there? Think of things in folklore: werewolves, vampires, ogres, trolls, all that kind of scary stuff. What makes them scary? The fact that this, creature, lives under bridges, the fact that this man turns into a werebeast during the full moon. It's the fact that these creatures can and do kill people. Always in these stories you hear about how their werewolf slaughtered men during the night, the troll eats whoever wants to cross his bridge, the vampire drinks blood of the innocent and kills them. The concept of death is the most frightening thing for human beings. And if we see that these Creatures of Grimm are not capable of dealing out death, then why are we afraid of them? Really, the human characters of RWBY have a higher body count than the Creatures of Grimm. Cinder has killed more people. Adam has killed more people. If you want, Grimm, on the other hand, just sort of look there, look nice, and are the cannon fodder for our heroes to just slice their way through. The Creatures of Grimm are not frightening. They're a laughingstock. So the question really is, how are the Creatures of Grimm, how can they be fixed? Can they be fixed? And as much as I have my doubts, I want to say yes, the Creatures of Grimm can be fixed. Just show that these creatures can be frightening. Actually on screen. Show them actually kill people. Show them actually cause misery for people. Show the ramifications and the aftermath of a Grimm attack. How maybe there's a lost child looking for their parents who are actually dead. Or the fact that, lots of people, are now homeless because the Creatures of Grimm destroyed their homes. Show us, the impact of an attack by the Creatures of Grimm. The best that we got was in Ren's backstory. We see what the Creatures of Grimm are capable of through Ren's backstory. But even then, we didn't see any deaths. Pretty much, Ren's mother was killed by falling debris, and his father was killed by the Grimm, yes, but off screen. It cut to black. We didn't actually see it. And even during that whole attack by the Grimm horseman in Ren's flashback backstory, There were other Grimm in the area. Why weren't they tearing into the other civilians that were running away? Why are you afraid to show us that the Creatures of Grimm can be scary? Doesn't even need to be graphic. Don't need to really show that much blood. Just be willing to show that people die when the Creatures of Grimm attack. This is how you fix the Creatures of Grimm. This is how you make the Grimm scary. But hey, those are just my thoughts, and the real question is, what do you guys think? Hey everybody, once again out there in YouTube land. I apologize for the big delay in me putting out videos, but I'm finally trying to get back into the groove of things. So this is kind of like the first big RWBY video that I want to do before RTX. So I hope that you enjoyed. Be sure to like and favorite if you did. Subscribe, of course, if you feel inclined to. Check out some other videos linked down in the description, as well as links taking you to my Twitter and Patreon page. Big thanks to my Patreon sponsors. And until next time, be a good person, tip your waitresses, keep moving forward, and I'll see you guys the next time I'm out there in YouTube land. I'll see you then. Yeah!